They thought they were gods, creeping in the dark, cloaked in silence, watching us like insects in a jar. For years they moved unseen, untouchable, believing humanity was too blind, too weak to notice. But they forgot one thing: we are the species that hunted predators with sticks. We are the apex of chaos, born in war, evolved in fire. And when we saw the invisible hand behind the curtain, we didn't run. We grinned, because the moment they revealed themselves was the moment they lost control. This is the story of how humanity turned the hunters into prey, and reminded the galaxy why you never, ever corner a human. They thought they were untouchable, watching us from behind cloaked ships and unseen satellites, slipping through our defenses like shadows in the night. To them, Earth was a curiosity, a little ball of chaos filled with noisy, irrational creatures who barely understood their own technology. They watched as we fought each other, built civilizations, tore them down, and built them again. We were interesting, nothing more. Dangerous? No, not to them. They thought they were invisible. But the thing about humans is this: we notice patterns. We feel when something isn't right. You don't need to see the predator to know it's there. You sense it. A chill in the air, a glance that feels too long, a silence that isn't natural. Call it instinct, call it paranoia. Whatever it is, it's saved us for thousands of years. And in time, we began to feel them. Not see them, not hear them, but feel them. At first, it was just whispers, stories from pilots, strange readings from deep space, satellites that vanished without a trace. Our governments chalked it up to errors, malfunctions, conspiracy theories, but the stories didn't stop. They grew louder, more precise, until finally, someone somewhere asked the one question that changed everything: what if we're not alone, and what if they're already here? That was the moment everything shifted. Quietly, without a word to the public, humanity turned its eyes to the stars with new purpose. Not with wonder, not with hope, but with suspicion. We built new sensors, new weapons, new programs hidden, classified, scattered across the globe. We stopped looking outward and started looking between the lines, and then we saw them, not fully, not clearly, but we saw the distortion, the ripples in the atmosphere, the flickers where there shouldn't be any. Ships that weren't there, and then were, creatures that moved like ghosts, believing we were still blind. They didn't realize we had been watching them back, studying, learning, waiting. Humans have a funny habit: we pretend to be weaker than we are. We play dumb. We let our enemies think they have the upper hand right up until the moment we strike. So that's what we did. The trap was elegant, simple. We let them come closer, let them believe they were still in control. And then, in one coordinated global moment, humanity dropped the mask. We shut down their probes, cracked their cloaking fields. And for the first time, they felt fear, because we weren't what they expected. They expected panic, collapse, screaming mobs, and broken systems. But what they got was precision, unity, ruthless, calculated retaliation. We didn't beg. We didn't plead. We adapted instantly, like we always do. And when their ships uncloaked over our skies, ready to assert dominance, they found missile lock-ons, hacking viruses already crawling through their systems, and human soldiers waiting with eyes cold and steady. They had never fought anything like us. See, we don't have claws or natural armor. We don't regenerate limbs. But we have something more terrifying. We have imagination. We build, we break limits, we turn weakness into weapons. We turn fear into fury. And when we are threatened, we become monsters, not just to survive, but to make sure no one dares threaten us again. The first skirmish lasted 8 minutes. 8. By the end of it, 3 alien vessels were ash in orbit, and we had captured one of their scouts alive. He looked at us with something ancient species rarely show: respect, maybe even regret, and now the galaxy knows. The invisible ones are no longer hidden. The whispers have turned to warnings, and humanity, once considered primitive, is now a force they fear. We never asked for this war, but we're not backing down from it, because the thing they didn't understand, the fatal mistake they made, is thinking humanity is just a species. We're not. We are a storm, a wildfire, a sleeping giant that remembers every scar, every wound, every betrayal. And when we wake up, nothing stays the same. They thought they were invisible. They thought wrong. They thought they were gods. Silent watchers in the dark, cloaked in technology beyond our comprehension. They hovered above us, unseen, untouched, certain we were too primitive, too disorganized, too small to ever notice. For them, Earth was a playground, a testing ground, maybe even a warning to others of what happens when intelligence grows without guidance. They moved through our skies like shadows, listening, studying, maybe even laughing at the chaos below. To them, we were just another curiosity, loud, irrational creatures playing with fire and calling it progress. They believed they had all the time in the universe, that their advantage would last forever, but they forgot one thing. Humanity is not a species you watch for long without consequences. We don't take kindly to being prey. We don't like being underestimated, and we never ever stay blind forever. They thought they were invisible. And for a while they were, but humans, we're strange. We sense when we're being watched. We notice when the stars don't move quite the way they should. We see patterns in chaos, and we obsess over mysteries. The more they tried to stay hidden, the more we became determined to find them. And find them we did. First, it was whispers blips on military radars, thermal images that didn't make sense, aircraft systems going haywire in clear skies. Stories dismissed as myths, hoaxes, the rantings of conspiracy theorists. But deep inside government black rooms and research labs, the whispers were growing into something undeniable. We weren't alone, and worse, they were already here, so we adapted, quietly, ruthlessly. We built countermeasures in secret. We launched silent satellites, masked in deep space. We rewrote physics where needed, bent our minds and machines to chase what couldn't be seen. We stopped trying to be noticed by the stars, and instead began preparing for war in the shadows, and when the time came, we didn't panic. We grinned because that's the part they didn't see coming. We are the species that turned bone into blade, fear into fury, chaos into strategy. We hunted predators 10 times our size with nothing but teamwork and a sharp rock. We've survived plagues, wars, nuclear fire, and extinction-level threats, and we've done it by adapting faster than anyone else. So when they finally slipped just once, it was enough. We hit them like lightning. One moment they were hidden gods, the next they were prey. Their ships flickered into view, for the first time massive, ancient, silent. We were supposed to fall to our knees in awe. Instead, we aimed every missile, every railgun, every directed energy cannon we had, and we pulled the trigger. Not just from Earth, from space, from the moon, from Mars, we struck from every angle, not out of fear, but because we had been waiting for this moment. And they learned something terrifying. Humans don't just survive, we retaliate. In minutes, their fleet scattered. Some burned in our skies, others fled into the void, and a few we captured. When we looked into their eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, we didn't see gods. We saw something else. We saw fear, because they realized what we were, not savages, not children. We were a species that learned war before it learned peace. A race that turned every scar into armor, every defeat into evolution. A people who dream of peace but are built for conflict. And now the galaxy knows word has spread, not of Earth, the backwater planet, but of humanity, the unpredictable variable. The apex of chaos, the one force in the universe you don't provoke. We didn't start this, but we will finish it. Because now that we know what's out there, what's watching, we will never sleep again. We will grow, expand, evolve, and prepare. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but because we know how this ends. It ends with them remembering why you never corner a human, why you never push a species born in fire, tempered by war, and united by one unbreakable instinct: survival. They thought they were invisible. They thought wrong. For years, we lived under a shadow we couldn't see. Something cold, watching, waiting, not with malice, but with detachment, like scientists over a petri dish. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't land in grand ships or speak in booming voices. No, that would have meant they saw us as equals. They didn't. To them, we were insects. Maybe interesting, maybe clever, but still insects. They watched us evolve, build cities, send probes to the edge of our system. They saw our wars, our mistakes, our grief, and they didn't interfere, not because they respected us, but because they didn't think we mattered. And they thought we'd never know, but here's the truth about humans: we notice things, we obsess over the unexplained. A strange signal here, a weather balloon that wasn't, a flash of light above the ocean that vanished without a sound. Maybe they thought we wouldn't connect the dots, but we did, we always do, and we didn't just notice. We investigated, we hunted, we watched the watchers. Across decades, in bunkers buried beneath cities and remote labs far from any map, we turned curiosity into strategy. We developed instruments to see what they tried to hide. We built machines to hear frequencies they thought were silent. We took their arrogance as a challenge. Still, they believed they were untouchable until the day they made a mistake. It wasn't much, a flicker of movement, a shadow over a satellite, a subtle distortion in the sky, but we caught it. And for the first time in human history, we weren't guessing. We had proof they were real and they were here. We didn't go public. We didn't run to the media or send out global alerts. We did what humans do best. We adapted. Quietly, efficiently, purposefully, we mobilized Black Ops teams. We weaponized our knowledge. We tested experimental tech we weren't even sure would work. And above all, we prepared, because we knew that once we acted, there would be no going back. So we waited for the right moment. And when it came, we didn't hesitate. They were observing again, maybe closer than ever, a small craft hovering in the upper atmosphere, cloaked, silent, confident. A team of ours had tracked it for weeks, and in the dead of night, in skies they believed no one controlled, we opened fire. It was over in seconds. To the world below, it looked like a meteor streaking across the sky, but we knew better. We had struck first, and inside the wreckage, we found what we had only imagined in nightmares and fantasies. A being not monstrous, but intelligent, ancient, precise, evolved. It wasn't afraid, not at first. It looked at us with mild curiosity, like we were some inconvenient anomaly. Until we spoke to it, until it realized we had been watching them too. Until it understood that its kind was no longer invisible. The fear came slowly, because fear always comes slowly to those who have never known vulnerability. And now, things are changing, whispers ripple across the stars, rumors of the primitive species that saw through the cloak. That fired first, that brought down a scout ship and captured one of their own. The observers are beginning to retreat. The once mighty empires who overlooked Earth now ask questions they never bothered with before. What are humans? What else do they know? What are they building? The galaxy no longer sees Earth as a distant, chaotic world spinning around a yellow sun. Now they see a warning light. They see the species that noticed, the species that adapted, the species that struck back. And deep down, they feel it. The old order is shifting, because Earth isn't as small as they thought. Humanity isn't as primitive as they assumed. We don't bow, we don't beg, and we don't forget. We were never supposed to find out. But we did. We were never supposed to fight back, but we have, and now, the stars will remember. They will remember the world that pierced the veil. The people who refused to stay in their place. The species that was watched for too long and finally said, enough. They thought they were invisible. They thought wrong. They watched us from the darkness between stars, not with fear or caution, but with quiet amusement. To them, we were background noise, a primitive world still learning to crawl. They didn't see a threat. They saw a curiosity, something to catalog and contain, like animals behind glass. They cloaked themselves in perfect silence. They observed without blinking, without breaking form, believing their technology could hide them forever. Their arrogance was their shield. Their superiority made them careless, and that was their first mistake. Because humans, above all else, notice patterns. We question everything. We chase ghosts until we prove they're real, or disappear trying. We turn speculation into obsession, and obsession into innovation. That's who we are. It's why we reached the skies in mere centuries, why we split the atom, why we pushed metal beyond sound and dared to send voices into space long before we were ready. We are the question that refuses to be silenced, and we started to see them. At first, the signs were small, odd readings, disappearing probes, entire surveillance satellites going dark without a trace. Some called it malfunctions, others whispered of interference. But behind closed doors, in the halls of hidden government bunkers and secret global alliances, a different truth began to emerge. We were not alone, and we were being watched. Still, we said nothing publicly. We didn't sound alarms or ignite panic. That's not how we operate, we adapted. We created shadow organizations beyond nations, beyond politics. We built tools to map the unseeable, radars that listen between frequencies, weapons for threats we could barely comprehend. They thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. And when we did, we remembered who we are, the descendants of survivors, the product of 10,000 generations that fought tooth and nail through fire, ice, disease, and war. We are forged in conflict. Our greatest strengths come alive when the odds turn against us, so we prepared in silence. And when the veil finally slipped, when one of their crafts flickered too close to the surface, not expecting resistance, we struck. The skies lit up with fire, not panic. Precision. The ship, though vastly superior in design, wasn't ready for a world that had been preparing for this moment in the shadows for decades. They underestimated our speed, our unpredictability. They didn't expect us to jam their systems, hijack their communications, or adapt mid-conflict. But we did, and within moments it was over. We brought the wreckage down without the world knowing. Retrieved its remains, secured the site, and then came the moment none of us would forget, opening the escape pod. It wasn't monstrous, it was calm, intelligent, composed, but its eyes changed the moment it saw us. There was confusion, then disbelief, then, for the first time, fear, because we weren't supposed to be capable of this. We weren't supposed to see them, we weren't supposed to win, and yet here we were. Something shifted that day, not just on Earth, but across the galaxy. Word spread, whispers echoed in long, forgotten corridors of spacefaring empires. The primitive world they ignored had just made a move no one expected. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows, and we didn't ask for permission. The game had changed. And now, out there, behind stars and swirling nebulas, they wonder, what else have we built in silence? What else have we discovered beneath our oceans and mountains and moonlit skies? What else are we capable of? Because humans don't play by the rules of ancient civilizations that measure progress in millennia. We leap, we burn, we build from the ashes, we do in decades what others take centuries to imagine. We are chaos wrapped in creativity. Fragile in body, indomitable in spirit, and now that we've seen them, we won't stop. They thought we were harmless. They thought we were too fractured, too emotional, too slow. They thought we were a world best left alone. But we saw through the lie. We broke the silence. We reminded them of the one truth they had forgotten. Never turn your back on the wild card. They thought they were invisible. They thought wrong. They hovered above us, confident and concealed. For years, maybe centuries, they watched hidden behind technology that bent light, masked sound, erased presence. To them, Earth was a silent petri dish, a curiosity spinning in the void. We weren't a threat. We weren't even interesting. Just another species stumbling through fire and metal, too young to understand what waited beyond the stars. They never considered we might look up and see beyond what we were told was real, but we did, because humanity doesn't stay in the dark for long. We are cursed, or perhaps blessed, with relentless curiosity. We break the rules of the natural order not out of rebellion, but because we need to know. We don't settle, we explore, we question, we challenge, and when the anomalies began, flickers in the sky, signals buried in radio noise, stars that moved when they shouldn't, we didn't ignore them. We investigated, we started to notice things, and that's when their illusion began to crack. We saw patterns in what was supposed to be chaos. Lights that reappeared every 17 days, always in the same patch of sky. Aircraft that disappeared in conditions too perfect for accidents. Entire satellites gone, not malfunctioning, but surgically removed. Something was watching us, and someone tried very hard to erase the evidence. But humanity has a long memory, and we kept looking. Our scientists weren't dismissed. Our data wasn't buried. It was funneled into projects the public would never know. Black sites buried in mountains. Underground labs powered by independent reactors. Teams of the best minds on the planet, engineers, hackers, astronomers, soldiers, all sworn to secrecy, all chasing a question we already knew the answer to. We were not alone. Then came the breach. A ship barely visible, but not quite invisible, drifted too close to a military base in northern Alaska. Whether it was malfunction or arrogance, we don't know, but for a fraction of a second, their cloak dropped. Just a shimmer. Just enough, we launched. A swarm of stealth drones swarmed the craft, jamming its systems, forcing it to land. We had trained for this, simulated it for years, and in less than 5 minutes, the ship was down, no damage. No noise, no witnesses. What came next changed everything. The ship's hull wasn't metal. It pulsed like living tissue. It resisted cutting tools, adapted to magnetic disruption, rejected heat, but we kept pushing. We always do. And when we finally breached it, what we found inside was not a monster. It was something calm, composed, almost serene. Until it looked at us, until it realized we were not panicked, we were not confused, we were prepared. That's when the serenity vanished, replaced by disbelief, by calculation, then, unmistakably, by fear. Because, for the first time, they realized they weren't observing animals, they were looking at equals. Or worse, something unpredictable. That day, they learned what others across history have learned when they underestimated us. Humanity does not wait to be told what it can do. We do not fit into neat boxes. We are not the sum of our flaws. We are driven by something no day, the model can measure. Hope, instinct, and a refusal to give up. We have destroyed ourselves a dozen times over, and still we rise. We lost millions in wars, in plagues, in disasters of our own making. And yet we reach farther, build faster, fight harder. We turn pain into progress, doubt into determination. And now, with the stars watching, we've turned fear into fuel. They thought we'd be blind forever. They thought we'd kneel if we saw them. They thought wrong. We are not the species they ignored. We are not the child they forgot to fear. We are the storm behind the silence, the fire in the void, the question the galaxy didn't want to answer. And now that we've seen them, now that we know they exist, there is no going back. Let them hide behind their cloaks. Let them whisper among themselves, because Earth is not sleeping anymore. Humanity has opened its eyes. And we are not afraid of the dark.